Good morning, everyone. Titus here for part 12 of our Asteroids mini-series, and in this one, we'll work on creating the logic that will move the UFO enemy around the map. Let's not waste any time and jump right into it. Alright, so we have our world right here. What we need to do is, when we play the map, we obviously have the timer set up to where it'll randomly spawn our UFO, which is great, but we need a way to actually move the UFO around. So what we can do is we can use target points. I think will be a simple solution. So what we'll do is we're going to come to our perspective view. We'll switch it to top-down view. We'll zoom out a bit. And under the add option at the top, you can search for target point. I like using target points because they're invisible in-game, but you can honestly use any object. Just make it hidden in-game. We'll drag it into the scene, and then at the top, you're going to click on this blueprint icon, and there's an option to convert the selection to a blueprint class. We were going to select the harvest components, and then we're going to give it a name. I think for this one, we'll just call it BP underscore enemy spawn. And then we have our enemy spawn blueprint. And that's pretty much it. We don't really need to do anything in it. So we got our first one created. I think for some values, remember we're not going to move on the z-axis. We'll keep it at 0. But for the x and y, we can do our first one at 1500 and then negative 3000. And then we can just hold Alt and drag off, and we'll get a duplicated one. And we'll just set up 4 of these, I think. And that way we cover each quadrant. So we'll set this one at negative 1500 and then negative 3000. And then we'll hold Alt, drag another one. And this one's going to be negative 1500 and 3000. So we're keeping the same values, we're just mirroring them across different axes. We'll hold Alt, drag this one over here, and this is going to be a positive 1500 and a positive 3000. And you can add as many as you want. It honestly doesn't matter. The more you add is going to give you more variance with how the UFO moves around. So, that might actually be beneficial. It gives you a little bit more randomness to it, I guess. We'll save that. And now what we need to do is we need to update our UFO. So let's open this up. For the UFO, we're going to be working on 2 custom events and 1 custom function and the begin play. So for the custom events, the first one we're going to do, so we'll just search for custom event. We'll call it maybe move to. And this is obviously going to control where the UFO is currently moving to. And then we'll do another custom event. And I want to kind of dim the lights when the UFO comes in, mainly because I added some emissive materials to the UFO, so I kind of want to maybe have that show off. And plus maybe it'll be a little bit harder to shoot the asteroids in the dark, so maybe that would be kind of fun. We'll call this maybe mood lighting. Hopefully I spelled that right, mood lighting, I think so. Alright, and our custom function, we'll go to our functions section over here, hit the plus sign, and then we can call this random location. And we'll come to that in a second. So let's kind of, I guess, kind of prototype this out. Off the begin play, let's come into a cast to our BP game manager, which is our game mode. So we can pull off the object and do get game mode. And then we can right click and promote this to a variable, and we can call this our game manager reference. That way we can call off and pull things as we need them. In the last video, we created a function inside the game manager to pause the rocks from being thrown. So you can pull off this pin and search for that function, which was called pause rocks. So that way we're not being pelted by asteroids while this UFO is flying around shooting us. After that, we can maybe call into a move to, which is the custom event we just set up down here. And then after the move to, we can call in a get actor of class, a single actor. And then we can tell it to search for a directional light. And the reason we're doing a directional light is because in a very early video, we set the level to use a directional light. And that is actually how we're controlling some of the lighting here. We have a value or an intensity value of 1. We can increase that or set it to 0 to darken the scene and, you know, kind of make things harder to see, basically. So what we should do, though, is it's good practice to come into a check, like an is valid check. So you can come off this and say, is this thing valid? Does it exist? That way you won't crash. In the event that it does exist, we can promote it to a variable. We'll call it our directional light reference. And then we can set that variable only when it's a valid object, basically when it exists. And then from here, we can probably call into our, I think we called it mood lighting, which was that custom event we created down here. I think starting off, this will be our begin play, so we can maybe comment this code out. And we'll just call this begin play, and maybe we'll add a little bit of notes to it a little bit later. All right, let's work on some of these other functions here, though. I think for the lighting, that one's going to be probably the easiest one to do. We can just maybe simply come into a timeline. And then off that timeline, we can get our directional light. So we can hold control, drag that in, pull off that, and call a set intensity. And it's going to add our light component automatically. So we can just maybe line that up like so. And then we basically need to set a new intensity. And that's what we're going to use our timeline for. So let's double click the timeline. I'm going to do maybe 2 seconds. I think it's short enough. And we'll add a single track. It'll be a float value because we're adjusting a float value here. So float value, we'll just call it intensity. I think we only need 2 keyframes. So we'll add a keyframe at time 0. When we start off, the light's going to be on. That value is 1. After 2 seconds, so we'll do a time of 2, the light should be off. So it's a value of 0. We can then frame this. It's very linear. If you want a smoother transition, you can right click on each endpoint and set it to auto for interpolation. That way it'll be a little bit smoother. Compile, save, and event graph. So we can hook up the update function and the intensity, and then it'll update across this timeline this new intensity value. Hopefully that makes sense. So basically, as time goes on, so you know, after a little bit, it's going to be like 0.9, you know, then 0.8, 0.7, 0.6, 0.5, and it's basically just lowering the value over time. So it's a gradual intensity change rather than an abrupt on-off sort of thing. And then this will be our atmosphere, I guess, or mood lighting, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. For the move to code, this one's actually pretty simple as well. We can just use our box collider. So let's just drag this in, and then we can pull off the box collider because the static mesh follows the box collider. So we just move the box collider around, the static mesh will go with it, playing its animation. It's pretty straightforward, right? So we'll just call move component 2. And then we need to feed in an actual location. I think we could just select our event under the inputs. Let's add a new input. We'll call it a target location. Since we're dealing with locations are vectors. So let's just change this to a vector type. Compile. And then we can just take our target location and pop it in over here. And then on the execution, we tell it to move to that target location. But where is it pulling that target location from? The first time this gets called is on the begin play. So because we just added that pin, it's now showing up here. So it's going to move to 000 world origin, which is fine. We'll pull it off screen, and maybe we'll have it move to center screen and then start off from there. And I think that's a good point to pull from. We can say do it over, I don't know, let's do 3 seconds. You can ease in or ease out. I think for this I want it to be kind of fast and jarry, so I'm going to leave those options off. But after it moves to the location, we want it to move to a new location. So how do we implement that? Well, that's going to be where our random location function is. So we can call off this into a random location. And we set that up in this function right here. So this is where we're getting to our target points that we set up around the map with this enemy spawn blueprint that we created. So we need a way to reference one of these items, preferably randomly, and then we need to get its location. And then once we have its location, we basically feed it into the move to tell the UFO to move there. That's pretty easy. You can drag off this and just say, get all actors of a class. The class is going to be our BP enemy spawn that we made. And then off this array, you can call a random array item. So just pick one of the items at random. And then what we'll need is the world location. So you can do get world location. It's going to make a reference to the box collider or the UFO because it's in the instance of this blueprint. Pick either one, doesn't matter. Just delete the reference, because what we want to do is actually plug this into here, and then it'll convert that for you automatically to get that world location. From here, we can call the move to, and the move to is our custom event that we created right here. And then that has an input pin that we can plug this in over here. So basically what this does is begin play will call move to. It's going to move our UFO to world origin 000. It's then going to call random location. Random location is then going to get all our enemy spawns, target points. It's going to pick one at random. It's going to get that target's location. It's going to call move to and pipe in that location. And then the UFO is going to move to that new destination. After it does that, it's then going to call random location and repeat and rinse basically over and over again. Now there'll be some instances where it grabs the same target location, so the UFO won't move at all. But you know, the more random points you put in, the less likely that is to happen. But I think this is pretty good to test, so let's comment. We'll call our movement code. Oops. There we go. All right, and we'll set this to blue. All right, so let's see what happens. So let's play this and kind of test it out. So I'll move around out of the way. There it spawns. After 3 seconds, it should move. Looks like it darked the scene pretty good. And we can see our UFO is moving around just fine. Now the rocks shouldn't spawn, so it should be an empty map, assuming I shot all of them. And now our UFO is just zooming around, having a good time. Working pretty good. And like I said, you can add more target points, put them all around the map, and it'll basically increase the randomness of it moving around and stuff. But all right, everyone, I think we'll cut the video here to keep it short. But in the next one, we'll tackle the death code for the UFO so we can shoot it while it flies around the map. And as always, thanks for watching, consider subscribing, and see you on the next one.